I've been a police officer in Millfield, California for 8 years. What happened on March 15, 2023, made me realize how predators use innocent online transactions to hunt their victims. It was around 2:30 p.m. when dispatch crackled through my radio. Unit 47, we have a welfare check request at 1247 Maple Avenue. Caller states her daughter went to buy furniture from Craigslist 3 hours ago and hasn't returned calls. I was patrolling in my 2019 white Crown Victoria when the call came in. The rain had been steady all morning, turning the streets slick and gray. I responded that I was en route, figuring it was probably another overprotective parent worried about their adult child. When I arrived at the small ranch house, I was greeted by Maria Garcia, a woman in her 50s with worry lines etched deep around her eyes. She invited me into her modest living room where family photos covered every surface. Officer, my daughter Jennifer is 22, but she's very trusting. She saw this bedroom set on Craigslist yesterday, a beautiful oak dresser, nightstand, and mirror for only $300. The pictures looked professional, and the seller, who called himself David Johnson, seemed legitimate in their messages. Maria showed me the Craigslist posting on her phone. The furniture did look high quality for the price. Solid oak with intricate carved details that would normally retail for over $1,000. The photos were well lit and showed the items from multiple angles. The seller's responses were polite and detailed, including measurements and condition descriptions. Jennifer was supposed to meet him at 11:30 this morning at a storage facility on Pine Road. She took $300 cash and drove there in her 2020 silver Honda Accord. She always texts me when she arrives somewhere, but I haven't heard anything since 11:15 when she said she was pulling into the facility. Something about this felt wrong. Pine Road was on the outskirts of town, mostly industrial buildings and storage facilities. Not exactly where you'd expect someone to store bedroom furniture they were actively selling. The area was notorious for being isolated, especially during weekday afternoons when most businesses were closed. Did she give you the exact address? I asked, pulling out my notepad. Storage Plus, 2847 Pine Road. Unit 47. I tried calling the number from the ad, but it goes straight to voicemail. A generic message, nothing personal. Just says leave a message and I'll get back to you. I radioed dispatch for backup and requested they run the phone number through our system. While waiting, I had Maria show me all the communications between Jennifer and the seller. The messages were brief but convincing. David claimed he was moving cross-country for work and needed to sell everything quickly. He'd mentioned being recently divorced and needing to liquidate assets fast. He seemed so genuine, Maria said, scrolling through the text exchanges. Look, he even offered to help her load the furniture into her car. Said he had moving straps and everything. That detail made my stomach turn. Offering to help load heavy furniture was exactly the kind of setup predators use to isolate victims and get them into vulnerable positions. Officer Thomas Williams arrived 15 minutes later in his 2021 black Tahoe. Tom had been my partner for 3 years, and I could see the same concern in his eyes when I briefed him on the situation. He'd worked cases involving online predators before, and knew the warning signs as well as I did. We drove to Storage Plus with Maria following in her burgundy Honda Pilot. The facility was larger than I expected, rows of orange roll-up doors stretching back into the property like a small city of metal boxes. The rain had intensified, making visibility poor and creating an eerie atmosphere among the storage units. Water pooled in the unpaved areas between rows, and the sound of rain on metal created a constant drumming noise. The office building was closed, which struck me as odd for a Tuesday afternoon. A handwritten sign on the door read, "Back in 20 minutes," with no timestamp. The parking lot had only 3 vehicles: Jennifer's silver Accord, a beat-up pickup truck, and an older model blue sedan with tinted windows. Unit 47 was in the back section, isolated from the main entrance, and surrounded by what appeared to be mostly empty units. As we approached, I noticed Jennifer's car was parked at an odd angle near the unit, driver's door slightly ajar with her purse visible on the passenger seat. Her phone was plugged into the charger, screen dark. My radio crackled with dispatch's response. Unit 47, that phone number is registered to a prepaid carrier purchased with cash at a convenience store in Bakersfield 2 weeks ago. No subscriber information available. Tom and I exchanged glances. This was escalating from a welfare check to something much more serious. Prepaid phones purchased with cash were classic tools of criminals trying to avoid detection. The storage unit door was rolled up about 3 feet, enough for someone to duck under but not enough to see clearly inside. I could see furniture inside, the same pieces from the Craigslist photos. But something was off about the arrangement. It looked staged, like a showroom display rather than someone's actual belongings being stored. There were no moving supplies, boxes, or personal items you'd expect from someone genuinely relocating. "Jennifer?" I called out, hand moving instinctively to my service weapon. "This is Officer Marcus Johnson with Millfield PD. Are you in there?" Silence except for the steady drumming of rain on metal roofing and the distant hum of traffic from the main road. Tom positioned himself on the far side of the unit, while I approached the opening from the left. We'd done this dance dozens of times in potentially dangerous situations. Create multiple angles, eliminate blind spots, maintain communication. That's when I heard it, a muffled sound from inside, like someone trying to speak through tape or cloth. "We need that door up now." I radioed dispatch for additional units and emergency medical services. Tom and I worked together to lift the heavy door completely, our training taking over as we cleared the immediate area for threats. Inside, behind the furniture display, Jennifer was bound to a metal folding chair with duct tape over her mouth and around her wrists and ankles. Her eyes were wide with terror, but she was conscious and moving. She had what appeared to be minor bruising on her face and arms, but she was alive. More disturbing were the other items in the unit that became visible once we had full access. Multiple cell phones were scattered on a small table. A laptop computer was open and running, and what appeared to be a professional camera setup was pointed directly toward the chair where Jennifer was restrained. Extension cords ran from the camera equipment to a portable generator humming quietly in the corner. As Tom worked to free Jennifer, carefully cutting the tape with his knife while speaking to her in calm, reassuring tones, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Scattered on a folding table were printed emails, dozens of them. All responses to various Craigslist ads. Furniture, electronics, jewelry, appliances. All from young women who had expressed interest in meeting to purchase items. "This isn't his first time," I told Tom as we heard sirens approaching in the distance. "He's been using Craigslist to target victims systematically. This is a whole operation." Jennifer was shaken but physically unharmed beyond minor bruising. Through tears and a hoarse voice, she explained that David had seemed completely normal at first, a middle-aged man in a clean business suit who had been loading furniture into the unit when she arrived. He'd been polite, professional, even apologetic about the weather and the remote location. "He asked me to help him move the dresser so I could get a better look at the back panel," Jennifer said as paramedics checked her over. "Said there was some minor damage he wanted to show me honestly. The moment I stepped inside and bent over to look, he grabbed me from behind and put something over my face. Some kind of cloth that smelled chemical." She continued, her voice getting stronger as the shock began to wear off. "When I woke up, I was tied to that chair. He kept asking about my schedule, who knew where I was, when they'd expect me back. He had this notebook full of information about other girls. Names, addresses, phone numbers, work schedules. He said he'd been watching me for weeks, knew where I lived, where I worked. The suspect had fled when he heard our vehicles approaching, but he'd left behind a treasure trove of evidence that painted a terrifying picture of calculated predation. Detective Sarah Williams from our Crimes Against Persons unit arrived to process the scene, along with a crime scene photographer and evidence technician. What Detective Williams found over the next several hours of processing the scene was disturbing beyond anything we'd encountered in Millfield. The laptop contained saved conversations with over 60 women across 3 counties, all responding to too good to be true Craigslist ads. He'd been methodical in his approach, creating detailed profiles of potential victims, studying their social media accounts, learning their routines and vulnerabilities. The scary part, Detective Williams told me later as we reviewed the evidence, is how sophisticated his operation was. He'd research each victim extensively through social media, learning their schedules, their interests, their family situations, their financial status. This wasn't random hunting, he was selecting specific types of victims based on detailed criteria. The notebook Jennifer had mentioned contained pages of handwritten notes about different women. Physical descriptions, vehicle information, work schedules, family situations, even notes about their apparent financial status based on their social media posts and the items they were looking to purchase. 3 days later, after an intensive investigation involving multiple law enforcement agencies, we arrested Robert Michael Davis, a 43-year-old with a history of assault and fraud charges in 3 neighboring counties. The storage unit was registered under a false name, paid for 6 months in advance with prepaid cards purchased with cash. He'd been using the same hunting method in multiple cities across Central California. During his interrogation, Davis revealed the true extent of his operation with disturbing matter-of-fact detachment. He'd successfully lured and assaulted 11 women over the past 14 months using Craigslist as his primary hunting ground. Jennifer had been intended as victim number 12. He perfected his technique, learning from each encounter how to better manipulate victims and avoid detection. What haunted me most was how easily it could have been anyone. Jennifer was smart, cautious, and had taken reasonable precautions. She told her mother exactly where she was going, had communicated regularly throughout the morning, and had chosen to meet during daylight hours in what appeared to be a legitimate business location. But Davis had been patient, building trust over several days of messages, creating an elaborate backstory, even providing references to fake previous buyers. The case made me realize how online marketplaces had created entirely new opportunities for predators to operate. The anonymous nature of these platforms, combined with the cash-based transactions and private meetings in isolated locations, provided perfect cover for criminal activity. Traditional safety measures that worked for conventional crimes were inadequate for this new breed of digital predator. Jennifer's mother, Maria, later told me that her daughter had been hesitant to report the incident initially, feeling embarrassed that she'd fallen for what seemed like an obvious scam in hindsight. That's exactly what predators like Davis count on: victims' reluctance to report crimes they feel partially responsible for, and their shame at having trusted someone who seemed so legitimate. As I finished my report that evening, I couldn't shake the image of that storage unit. The methodical setup, the evidence of multiple victims, the calculated nature of Davis's operation. It wasn't a crime of opportunity or passion. It was a carefully planned business model designed to exploit the trust inherent in online marketplace transactions. The rain had finally stopped, but the case stayed with me for weeks. 3 days later, I thought we'd seen the worst of how online predators exploit innocent transactions. Then my partner Tom responded to what seemed like a routine call about suspicious activity at a local pharmacy. What he discovered there connected to something much bigger than any of us had imagined. What's the strangest or most unsettling experience you've had when meeting someone from an online marketplace? 3 days after the storage unit incident, I thought we'd seen the worst of Craigslist predators. Then Detective Robert Williams called me about a fraud case that connected to something much bigger. I'm Detective Amy Brown from Millfield PD's Financial Crimes Unit. What started as a simple fraud report on March 18, 2023, unraveled into a multi-state operation targeting online marketplace users. The call came in around 9:15 a.m. Detective Brown, we have a complainant at the station. Says she's been scammed out of $2,800 through a Craigslist electronics deal. Claims the seller has been running multiple fake ads targeting healthcare workers. I drove to the station in my unmarked 2022 blue Honda Accord. The rain from earlier in the week had cleared, but gray clouds still hung heavy over Ridgeway, California. The weather matched my mood. Something about this case felt bigger than a simple fraud complaint. Michelle Davis, a 28-year-old nurse from Clearwater Memorial Hospital, was waiting in interview room 2. She looked exhausted and embarrassed, clutching a thick folder of printed emails and bank statements like evidence of her own stupidity. "Detective, I'm not stupid with money, but this guy was incredibly convincing. I needed a new laptop for work, something powerful enough to run medical software and handle patient data securely. I found this MacBook Pro listed for $1,200, about half the retail price." She showed me the Craigslist posting on her phone. Professional photos, detailed specifications, even included the original receipt showing a purchase price of $2,400 just 6 months earlier. The seller, calling himself James Miller, claimed he was a software developer who'd received a company laptop and needed to sell his personal one quickly due to a cross-country move. The communication was perfect. Michelle continued, spreading out printed emails across the interview table. He answered technical questions about RAM and processor specs, provided additional photos when I asked, even offered to meet at the Apple Store so I could verify it was genuine before purchasing. But here's where the story got complicated. James said he was traveling for work and couldn't meet in person, but could ship the laptop through his company's shipping account. He'd send it overnight with full insurance, and she could inspect it thoroughly before sending payment through Zelle. He sent me a FedEx tracking number, shipping confirmations, even called me personally to confirm my address and delivery preferences. Everything seemed completely legitimate. When the package arrived the next day, it contained a MacBook Pro in the original box with all accessories, charger, documentation, everything. The laptop worked perfectly for 3 days. Michelle used it for work, loaded her medical software, even connected it to the hospital's secure network. Then she discovered the fraud in the worst possible way. "I was at work Thursday morning when hospital security approached me during my shift. They said the laptop I'd been using was reported stolen from the IT department 2 weeks earlier. The serial number matched their inventory system exactly." Michelle had unknowingly purchased stolen hospital equipment. But as I dug deeper into the investigation, I realized this was something far more sophisticated than simple theft and resale. I contacted the hospital's IT director, Dr. William Thomas, that afternoon. He explained that the laptop was one of 5 high-end machines stolen from a secure storage room during a weekend break-in. The theft had occurred during a weekend when the hospital was transitioning to new security systems. "What's strange about this theft," Dr. Thomas told me, "is that the perpetrator knew exactly which equipment to target. They bypassed dozens of cheaper items and went straight for our most expensive laptops and tablets. It definitely wasn't random or opportunistic." I requested the hospital's security footage and employee access logs for that weekend. The theft occurred on March 10th, between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. when the building should have been completely secure. Most disturbing was that the perpetrator had used a valid employee keycard to access the storage room. The keycard belonged to Michael Johnson, a recently hired IT contractor who'd been working on the hospital's security system upgrade project. When I tried to contact him through the information on file, I discovered that Michael Johnson didn't exist. The entire identity was completely fabricated. The background check documents were sophisticated forgeries. The hospital's HR director, Lisa Garcia, explained when I interviewed her. Social security number, employment history, professional references, even college transcripts. Everything checked out completely when we hired him 3 weeks ago. The fake Michael Johnson had used his legitimate hospital access to steal equipment, then sold it through Craigslist using another false identity. But as I continued investigating, the operation revealed itself to be far more complex than a simple theft and resale scheme. I traced the Zelle payments Michelle had made. The money went to an account registered to Sarah Williams in Stockton, California. When I contacted Stockton PD to verify this information, they informed me that Sarah Williams was also a victim. Her identity had been stolen and used to open multiple fraudulent bank accounts. We've been tracking similar cases across 3 counties for the past 6 months. Detective Marcus Anderson from Stockton PD told me during our phone conversation. Someone's been systematically stealing identities, using them to get jobs at healthcare facilities and tech companies, then stealing equipment to sell online. The pattern was deeply disturbing. The perpetrator would research facilities undergoing security upgrades or system transitions, times when access controls might be temporarily relaxed or when new contractors wouldn't seem unusual. He'd create fake identities specifically tailored to get hired for short-term contract work, then exploit his insider access to steal high-value equipment. Over the next week, I coordinated with law enforcement agencies across Central California. We identified 12 separate thefts at hospitals, tech companies, and government offices over the past 8 months. All followed the same precise pattern: fake contractor identity, theft during security transitions, resale through Craigslist using sophisticated fraud techniques. The Craigslist ads were masterfully crafted. Each included legitimate receipts and documentation, which we later discovered were obtained by hacking into the original purchaser's email accounts. The seller personas were detailed and convincing, complete with elaborate social media profiles and fake work histories going back years. He wasn't just stealing equipment, I realized during a case conference with other detectives. He was stealing entire identities, then using those identities to steal equipment, then using other stolen identities to sell it. It's identity theft nested inside identity theft, all facilitated through online marketplaces. The breakthrough in the case came when Michelle remembered something odd about her transaction that she'd initially dismissed. The shipping label had been printed at a FedEx store in Modesto, California, at 3:47 a.m. on March 15th, an unusual time for legitimate business activity. I obtained the store's security footage and saw our suspect clearly, a white male in his 30s, wearing a baseball cap and paying with cash. More importantly, he'd used a fake ID to access the FedEx shipping account, an ID that perfectly matched the Michael Johnson identity used at the hospital. Cross-referencing security footage from multiple FedEx locations across the region, I identified a disturbing pattern. Our suspect was using overnight shipping to create urgency and legitimacy in his sales. He'd print shipping labels at unmanned kiosks during off hours, using stolen credit cards to pay for overnight delivery services. The case expanded dramatically when I discovered his method for finding targets. He'd been systematically monitoring hospital employee social media accounts, looking for posts about new equipment purchases, security upgrades, or staffing changes. He'd then research the facilities extensively, identify vulnerabilities, and craft fake identities specifically designed to get hired during transition periods. "This is an opportunistic crime," I told my lieutenant during a comprehensive case briefing. "This is systematic identity theft being used to enable systematic equipment theft, all facilitated through online marketplaces that provide perfect cover for laundering stolen goods." The investigation revealed how he perfected his infiltration techniques over months of practice. He'd study target facilities for weeks, learning employee schedules, security procedures, and equipment storage locations. He'd monitor job boards for temporary contract positions, then create fake identities tailored specifically to each opening. His fake personas weren't just names on forged IDs. He'd build complete employment histories spanning years, create detailed social media profiles with hundreds of posts and interactions, and even establish phone numbers with professional voicemail messages that referenced fake employers. When background check companies called his references, they'd reach accomplices who'd vouch convincingly for his fictional work history. The sophistication extended throughout his Craigslist operations. He'd photograph stolen equipment in professional settings to make items appear legitimate, create fake purchase receipts using stolen credit card information, and build seller personas with positive feedback from previous transactions, all fabricated through networks of fake buyer accounts. 2 weeks later, we arrested David Robert Miller, his real name, during a carefully planned sting operation in Fresno. He was attempting to sell stolen medical equipment from a veterinary clinic where he'd been working under yet another fake identity. Miller had been operating across 4 states for over 8 months. His apartment contained sophisticated identity theft equipment, high-quality printers for fake documents, card readers for cloning credit cards, and multiple computers running identity monitoring software to track his various personas and avoid detection. During his interrogation, Miller revealed the systematic nature of his operation with disturbing matter-of-fact detachment. He'd maintained detailed databases of target facilities, including employee schedules, security procedures, and equipment inventories. He'd sometimes spend months building credible work histories before applying for positions. The online marketplaces made everything easy, Miller admitted during questioning. People expect to get deals on used electronics. They don't ask too many questions if the price is right and the seller seems legitimate. I studied what buyers wanted to hear and gave them exactly that. What disturbed me most was how Miller had weaponized trust and human psychology. He'd analyzed successful transactions to understand buyer behavior, identifying the exact combination of price points, documentation, and communication styles that eliminated suspicion. He'd even created fake buyer personas to test his own fraud techniques. The victims extended far beyond equipment buyers like Michelle. Every fake identity he created destroyed someone's credit and financial security. The facilities he infiltrated suffered not just equipment losses but massive security breaches requiring hundreds of thousands in remediation costs. Michelle's case was resolved when we recovered her $2,800 through asset forfeiture, but the psychological impact lasted much longer. She told me she'd lost trust in online transactions entirely, and had become paranoid about sharing personal information. "I keep thinking about how convincing he was," she said during our final interview. "If someone can fake an entire identity well enough to get hired at a hospital, how can regular people protect themselves from something like this?" That question haunted me as I closed the case files. Miller's operation demonstrated how identity theft, employment fraud, and online marketplace scams could be combined into a devastating criminal enterprise that traditional fraud prevention methods couldn't adequately address. As I finished my report, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd only caught one operator in a much larger criminal network. The techniques Miller used were too sophisticated and well developed for a single person to have created independently. Someone had taught him these methods, and that someone was still out there. A week later, I thought Miller's arrest had ended our Craigslist fraud investigations. Then Officer Jennifer Garcia called about a suspicious incident at Millfield Community Hospital that made me realize we'd only scratched the surface of this criminal network. Have you ever encountered a deal online that seemed too good to be true? What made you suspicious, and how did you verify the seller's legitimacy before making the purchase? A week after Miller's arrest, I thought our Craigslist investigations were over. Then Officer Jennifer Garcia called about something that made my blood run cold. "I'm Officer Thomas Anderson with Millfield PD Patrol Division. What happened on March 28, 2023, showed me how online predators use legitimate transactions to identify and stalk victims." The call came in at 4:15 p.m. "Unit 23, we have a harassment complaint at 3421 Oak Street. Caller reports being followed by someone she met through Craigslist." I responded in my 2020 red Ford Explorer. The afternoon was clear but cold, typical March weather in Brookside, California. As I drove through the residential neighborhoods lined with modest single-family homes and small apartment complexes, I couldn't shake the feeling that this call was somehow connected to our recent fraud cases. Lisa Johnson, a 26-year-old elementary school teacher, met me at her apartment complex entrance. She was visibly shaken, constantly checking over her shoulder and glancing nervously at parked cars along the tree-lined street. "Officer, 3 weeks ago I sold my iPhone through Craigslist. The buyer seemed completely normal during our transaction, but now I think he's been following me everywhere I go. I'm scared to leave my apartment alone." She showed me the original Craigslist ad and text message conversations on her current phone. She'd listed her iPhone 12 for $400 to help pay some unexpected medical bills after a recent emergency room visit. The buyer, calling himself Robert Williams, had responded within hours with polite, professional messages. He asked to meet at the Starbucks on Cedar Lane at 2 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon. Said he worked in tech support and needed a reliable phone for his new job. The transaction seemed completely normal and safe. I even brought my roommate for extra security. Robert had arrived precisely on time, examined the phone thoroughly, tested all its functions including the camera and apps, and paid the full asking price in cash without any haggling or negotiation. The entire meeting lasted maybe 10 minutes in the busy coffee shop. Lisa thought nothing unusual about it until strange things started happening days later. 2 days after the sale, I noticed the same car parked outside my apartment complex when I left for work at 7:30 a.m. A dark green Honda Civic with heavily tinted windows. I didn't think much of it initially, figured it belonged to a neighbor or visitor. But the sightings increased in frequency and locations. The same green Civic appeared outside Lincoln Elementary School where she taught 4th grade, at the Safeway grocery store she frequented twice weekly, even at Planet Fitness where she worked out every Tuesday and Thursday evening. The car was always positioned where the driver could observe my movements but far enough away to avoid drawing attention. Sometimes I'd see it when I arrived somewhere, sometimes when I left. It was definitely becoming a disturbing pattern. Then Lisa started receiving text messages from unknown numbers with different area codes. Nothing directly threatening, but unsettlingly personal. Comments about her daily activities, what she was wearing, places she'd visited recently. She showed me screenshots of the messages. Nice blue dress today, looks good with your teaching style. Saw you at the coffee shop on Pine Road yesterday, you look stressed about something. Your workout routine is very consistent, same days every week. The messages were carefully worded to avoid direct threats, but they made it absolutely clear someone was watching me closely and knew my schedule. The worst part was last Tuesday afternoon. I was leaving school around 4 p.m. when I saw him sitting there. Lisa's voice trembled as she continued. The same guy who bought my phone was sitting in that green Civic across from the school parking lot, just watching. When he realized I was looking directly at him, he started the engine and drove away quickly. I took down all the details and ran the license plate Lisa had managed to photograph with her phone camera. The car was registered to Michael Brown in Fresno, California, but when I contacted Fresno PD for verification, they delivered disturbing news. We've had multiple reports of someone using Michael Brown's stolen identity for various fraudulent activities over the past 6 months. Detective Sarah Miller from Fresno PD informed me during our phone conversation. Credit cards, bank accounts, rental applications, even employment fraud cases. This immediately connected to our recent electronics fraud cases involving sophisticated identity theft. Someone was using stolen identities not just for financial crimes, but for stalking and systematic harassment of innocent victims. I initiated regular surveillance patrols of Lisa's apartment complex on Oak Street and Lincoln Elementary School. On March 30th, Officer Jennifer Garcia spotted the green Civic parked on Maple Avenue, strategically positioned to observe Lisa's apartment building from across the street. When Garcia approached the vehicle in her patrol car, the driver immediately fled the scene, but she got a clear view through the windshield. White male, approximately 35 years old, matching Lisa's detailed description of Robert Williams perfectly. I coordinated with Detective Amy Brown, who'd successfully handled the electronics fraud case involving David Miller. We compared surveillance footage from various locations with images from Miller's arrest. Different person entirely, but the operational methods were strikingly similar. We're definitely dealing with an organized criminal network, Detective Brown concluded after reviewing all available evidence. Multiple operators using identical techniques, stolen identities, Craigslist transactions as reconnaissance tools, systematic targeting of vulnerable victims. The investigation revealed increasingly disturbing patterns. Robert Williams had purchased items from 7 different women over the past 2 months through seemingly legitimate Craigslist transactions. All victims were young, lived alone, and had been subsequently stalked or harassed using identical methods. His approach was sophisticated and methodical. During supposedly legitimate transactions, he'd gather intelligence about victims, observing their home's security systems, noting their daily schedules, even following them briefly after meetings to learn their routines and identify behavioral patterns. He wasn't actually buying phones or electronics for personal use. I realized during our comprehensive case review meeting. He was buying access to victims. The Craigslist purchases were just elaborate reconnaissance missions disguised as normal commercial transactions. We discovered he'd been taking photographs during transactions, supposedly to document the item's condition for his personal records. But careful analysis revealed the photos actually captured victims' apartment numbers, parking assignments, security system details, and building access points. The text harassment campaign was psychological warfare designed to create persistent fear and paranoia. He'd send messages carefully timed to coincide with victims' daily activities, making them feel constantly watched and vulnerable in their own neighborhoods. Working closely with Detective Brown, we identified his base of operations, a storage unit facility in Salinas where he kept sophisticated surveillance equipment, detailed victim files, and multiple stolen vehicles used for different phases of his stalking operations. The storage facility was registered under another completely fabricated identity using forged documents. When we obtained search warrants and conducted our raid, we found evidence that shocked even experienced investigators who'd seen everything. Roberts had detailed profiles of dozens of women stored in organized filing cabinets. Professional quality photographs taken with telephoto lenses, comprehensive daily schedules, home addresses, workplace information, family details, even personal information gathered through extensive social media research and physical surveillance. This goes far beyond simple stalking behavior, Detective Brown observed as we processed the overwhelming evidence. This is systematic predatory behavior using online marketplaces as sophisticated hunting grounds for victim identification and selection. Most disturbing were the escalation plans we discovered in his handwritten notebooks. Detailed psychological assessments of which victims he considered suitable for advancement. Language that strongly suggested he was planning more serious crimes against carefully selected targets. We arrested William James Roberts, his actual legal name, during a coordinated traffic stop as he conducted surveillance on another potential victim near Modesto Community College. His vehicle contained professional-grade cameras, digital recording equipment, and detailed handwritten notes about his target's daily routine. Roberts had been operating his comprehensive stalking enterprise for over 14 months across 3 counties in Central California. He'd systematically purchase items from women specifically to identify vulnerable targets, then conduct extensive surveillance operations to gather intelligence for potential future crimes. During his interrogation, Roberts revealed his victim selection criteria with disturbing clinical detachment. He specifically targeted women who lived alone, maintained predictable daily schedules, demonstrated trusting behavior during initial transactions, and appeared to have limited family support systems. Online marketplaces are absolutely perfect for this type of operation, Roberts admitted with chilling casualness during questioning. Women selling personal items usually conduct transactions from their homes. They have to provide addresses, phone numbers, availability schedules. Everything you need to begin comprehensive surveillance operations. Roberts' operation included multiple stolen vehicles for different surveillance phases, numerous fake identities with supporting documentation, and surveillance equipment sophisticated enough for professional private investigation work. He'd invested over $15,000 in his stalking enterprise over the past year. The psychological impact on victims was devastating and long-lasting. Lisa required months of professional counseling and eventually relocated to another state to escape the trauma. Several other victims reported developing severe anxiety disorders and persistent paranoia about routine daily activities. The trust violation is absolutely devastating, Lisa told me during our final interview before her relocation. Every time I even consider selling something online now, I wonder if the buyer has ulterior motives. It's fundamentally changed how I interact with all strangers, even in professional settings. Roberts' case revealed how seemingly legitimate commercial transactions could be systematically weaponized for predatory purposes. Traditional safety advice about meeting buyers in public places was completely inadequate when the transaction itself was just the beginning of an extended stalking campaign. The network connections became undeniable when we compared Roberts' operational techniques with David Miller's sophisticated fraud operation. Both used stolen identities, both exploited trust inherent in online transactions, and both demonstrated advanced training in criminal methodologies that suggested professional instruction. Someone's definitely teaching these techniques systematically, Detective Brown concluded during our final case review. This level of operational sophistication doesn't develop organically through trial and error. There's a larger criminal organization behind these individual operators, providing training and coordination. As I prepared to close Robert's case file, I couldn't shake the persistent feeling that we were fighting symptoms rather than addressing the underlying disease. The methods were too similar, too professional, too well coordinated across multiple suspects to be purely coincidental. 3 days later, my concerns proved entirely justified when Detective Brown called about suspicious activity at Millfield Community Bank. What she discovered there connected all our previous cases to something none of us had imagined possible. The rain was starting again as I drove across town to meet her at the bank. Storm clouds were gathering overhead, and somehow, I knew this next investigation would be the one that finally revealed the true scope of what we were dealing with. Have you ever felt like someone was watching you after completing an online transaction? What specific safety precautions do you take when selling personal items to strangers through online marketplaces? 3 days after Robert's arrest, Detective Brown called about Millfield Community Bank. What she discovered there revealed the true scope of our nightmare. I'm Detective Michael Garcia, Financial Crimes Specialist with Millfield PD. March 31, 2023, changed everything I thought I knew about organized crime and how it operates in the digital age. The bank manager, Angela Williams, called at 8:30 a.m. with urgency in her voice. Detective, we've discovered systematic account fraud involving dozens of fake identities, all connected to online marketplace transactions. You need to see this immediately. I arrived at the bank in my unmarked 2023 charcoal Dodge Charger. The morning rain was steady, matching the dark revelation waiting inside Millfield Community Bank's main branch on Cedar Avenue. As I walked through the employee entrance, I could see the stress on Angela's face through the glass doors. Angela led me through the bustling lobby to a conference room that looked like a war room filled with printouts, account records, and multiple computer screens displaying complex transaction data. We've identified 47 fraudulent accounts opened over the past year, all using stolen identities, all funded through what appears to be proceeds from online sales. The pattern was absolutely staggering in its scope and sophistication. Each fake identity had opened checking accounts, obtained debit cards with PIN numbers, and conducted hundreds of carefully timed transactions. The money flow showed a sophisticated money laundering operation using Craigslist and other online marketplace sales as the primary income source. What's particularly disturbing? Angela continued, spreading out transaction printouts across the conference table like evidence at a crime scene, is the coordination level. These aren't random individual fraudsters operating independently. Look at these specific transaction patterns. She showed me detailed spreadsheets tracking money movement between accounts over several months. Funds would enter through Zelle payments from online sales, then be systematically distributed through a complex network of interconnected accounts before being withdrawn as cash or transferred to offshore banking systems in carefully orchestrated waves. The timing is far too precise to be coincidental. Multiple accounts receiving payments simultaneously from different sources, then transferring funds in coordinated waves every few days. This is professional-level money laundering with military precision and timing. I immediately called Detective Brown and Officer Anderson to review the evidence. When they arrived 30 minutes later, we realized we were looking at something completely unprecedented in our jurisdiction's 20-year history of financial crime investigation. David Miller's sophisticated electronics fraud operation, William Roberts' systematic stalking enterprise, and now this comprehensive banking network. Detective Brown said, studying the transaction records carefully while taking detailed notes. We're not dealing with individual criminals anymore. This is organized crime using online marketplaces as their primary revenue generation system. The bank records revealed the truly staggering scale of the criminal operation. Over $2.3 million had flowed through these fraudulent accounts in just 12 months of operation. The money came from hundreds of different Craigslist transactions, electronic sales, furniture sales, vehicle sales, jewelry transactions, even service-based transactions like home repairs and tutoring. They're not just stealing and reselling individual items for quick profits. I realized as we analyzed the comprehensive data patterns spread across multiple computer screens. They're running a complete integrated criminal enterprise. Theft, fraud, identity theft, stalking, money laundering, all coordinated components of one massive criminal operation. Angela provided additional disturbing information that made the situation even more serious and complex. Several legitimate account holders have attempted to access accounts they claim they never opened. When we showed them surveillance footage of people using their identities at our ATMs and teller windows, they insisted they'd never been to our bank in their lives. Their identities were stolen and used to create these accounts, but the criminals have been impersonating them so perfectly that our own tellers didn't suspect anything unusual during account openings and routine transactions. The sophistication was absolutely breathtaking and professionally executed. The criminal network had created complete false personas, complete with fake driver's licenses, social security cards, employment documentation, credit histories, and even utility bills good enough to pass our stringent bank verification procedures. Look at this specific pattern that repeats every week, Officer Anderson said, pointing to a detailed transaction timeline displayed on the largest monitor. Money comes in from Craigslist sales on Mondays and Tuesdays, gets laundered through the network Wednesday through Friday, then disappears into cash withdrawals or offshore transfers over weekends. The network operated exactly like a legitimate multinational business corporation, with clearly defined hierarchical roles and standardized operating procedures. Some members specialized in identity theft and document forgery, others in product theft and inventory management, others in online sales and customer service interactions, and others in money laundering and complex financial operations. We traced the offshore transfers to accounts in 3 different countries across 2 continents. The money was being moved through international banking systems using established money transfer protocols, making recovery nearly impossible and obscuring the ultimate destination and controlling parties. This isn't local crime anymore, Detective Brown observed grimly while reviewing international transfer records. This is international organized crime using our community as a testing ground for new criminal methodologies before expanding operations to other regions. The investigation expanded dramatically when we discovered the network's systematic recruitment methods designed to build their criminal workforce. They'd been identifying potential recruits through social media platforms, targeting people with financial difficulties, criminal histories, or personal vulnerabilities that made them susceptible to criminal recruitment and manipulation. New members would start with simple, seemingly harmless tasks, creating fake social media accounts or making small purchases to establish transaction histories and build credibility, then gradually be drawn into more serious crimes through psychological manipulation and increasing financial dependence on the organization. They're franchising criminal techniques like a legitimate business operation, I told my lieutenant during our emergency briefing with department leadership. Like a criminal MLM scheme, but with devastating real-world consequences for victims and entire communities. We coordinated with federal agencies as the true scope became clear and crossed state lines. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit took over the international aspects, while we continued investigating local operations and documenting victim impacts in our jurisdiction. Special Agent Jennifer Davis from the FBI's San Francisco field office reviewed our comprehensive case files during an all-day strategy session. You've uncovered a significant criminal network that connects to our ongoing national investigation. We've been tracking similar operations in 12 states using identical methodologies. The techniques are virtually identical across all locations: sophisticated identity theft enabling systematic online marketplace fraud, combined with advanced money laundering through legitimate banking systems. The network's training materials were particularly disturbing and professionally produced like corporate training manuals. We found detailed instruction manuals explaining how to steal identities, create convincing fake personas, conduct surveillance operations, and manipulate victims psychologically for maximum criminal benefit and minimal detection risk. They're not just committing crimes for immediate profit, Agent Davis explained during our federal coordination meeting. They're systematically teaching others to commit crimes using proven methodologies, creating a dangerous multiplier effect that spreads their methods across the entire country. The coordinated arrests began 2 weeks later after extensive surveillance and evidence gathering. Simultaneous raids across 3 states netted 27 suspects, including the network's leadership structure and key operational specialists. The evidence seized filled multiple warehouses, stolen merchandise, sophisticated identity theft equipment, surveillance gear, and detailed victim files. During extensive interrogations conducted over several days, we learned the network's complete origin story. It had started 3 years earlier as a small group of identity thieves who discovered that online marketplaces provided perfect cover for their criminal operations due to the anonymity and trust factors inherent in these platforms. Early success had led to systematic expansion, active recruitment of new criminal members, and eventually international criminal connections with established money laundering operations. Craigslist was just the beginning of our expansion, the network's technical specialist admitted during his interrogation session. We systematically expanded to Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, even Amazon and eBay marketplaces. Online commerce is the perfect environment for organized crime because of the anonymity factors and built-in trust assumptions. The network had been operating successfully for over 3 years, generating millions in criminal revenue while systematically destroying hundreds of innocent lives. Victims included not just people who'd purchased stolen items or been stalked and harassed, but everyone whose identities had been stolen to support the criminal operations. The psychological impact on our community was profound and long-lasting beyond our initial expectations. Trust in online transactions plummeted overnight. People became suspicious of neighbors, friends, even family members. The network had effectively poisoned the social fabric that made online commerce possible in our community. The worst part of this entire experience, Lisa Johnson told me during a comprehensive victim impact interview, is that they turned something fundamentally positive, the ability to connect with others and conduct business online safely, into something absolutely terrifying. They weaponized trust itself. The case fundamentally changed how our department approaches online crime investigation. We now recognize that seemingly unrelated incidents, individual fraud cases, stalking reports, identity theft complaints, might be interconnected components of larger criminal enterprises requiring coordinated law enforcement responses. Individual arrests aren't sufficient anymore. We need to identify and systematically dismantle entire criminal networks to prevent them from simply replacing arrested members and continuing operations with minimal disruption. As I prepared my final comprehensive report for department records, I reflected on how online marketplaces had created unprecedented opportunities for both legitimate commerce and sophisticated organized crime. The anonymity and trust factors that make online transactions possible also make them vulnerable to systematic criminal exploitation. The network's leaders received federal sentences ranging from 15 to 25 years in federal prison. But I knew others would inevitably emerge to fill the criminal void left behind. The techniques had been perfected through years of operation, the methods comprehensively documented in training materials, and the enormous profits clearly demonstrated. This won't be the last criminal network we encounter. Agent Davis warned during our final case debrief meeting. The methods are too successful, too profitable, and too easily replicated by other criminal organizations. Online marketplaces will continue attracting organized crime until we develop significantly better detection and prevention methods. 6 months later, we began investigating strikingly similar patterns in neighboring counties across Central California. The original network had been completely dismantled, but its criminal legacy lived on in the techniques it had pioneered and the numerous criminals it had trained before being shut down by law enforcement. The rain finally stopped as I closed the comprehensive case files in my office, but the metaphorical storm it represented was far from over. Online marketplaces had fundamentally changed both legitimate commerce and criminal enterprise, creating new vulnerabilities that criminals would continue exploiting for years to come. Have you changed how you use online marketplaces after learning about organized criminal networks? What additional precautions do you think are necessary to protect both buyers and sellers in the digital economy? A week after the banking network arrests, I thought we'd finally contained the Craigslist criminal operations. Then a missing person case shattered that illusion. I'm Detective Sarah Thompson with Millfield PD Missing Persons Unit. April 7, 2023, revealed how job scams can be deadly traps. The call came at 6:45 a.m. from Maria Rodriguez, frantic about her daughter. Detective, my daughter Kimberly went to a job interview yesterday and never came home. She found the position on Craigslist. I met Maria at her apartment on Elm Street. She showed me the job posting Kimberly had responded to, administrative assistant position paying $25 per hour, work from home after training, legitimate-looking company called Martinez Business Solutions. The interviewer, James Martinez, seemed professional in his emails. He scheduled Kimberly for a 2 p.m. interview at their office on Industrial Boulevard. She was excited about the opportunity. Kimberly Davis, 24, had been unemployed for 3 months after losing her retail job. The position seemed perfect: good pay, flexible schedule, opportunity for advancement. She dressed professionally and arrived early for the interview. She texted me at 1:55 p.m. saying she was walking into the building. That was the last time anyone heard from her. I drove to Industrial Boulevard in my unmarked 2022 Navy Chevrolet Impala. The address led to a mostly empty business complex with several vacant units. The supposed Martinez Business Solutions office was Unit 12, but the windows were covered with paper. The building manager, Robert Johnson, met me at the entrance. That unit's been empty for 6 months. No one's rented it recently, and I haven't seen any business activity there. However, yesterday afternoon I did notice a car parked outside Unit 12 around 2 p.m. Dark blue sedan, couldn't see the license plate clearly. I contacted the phone number from the job posting. Disconnected. The email address bounced back as invalid. Martinez Business Solutions didn't exist in any business registration database. Reviewing security footage from nearby businesses, I found Kimberly's silver Honda Civic arriving at 1:52 p.m. She parked and walked toward Unit 12. At 2:47 p.m., the dark blue sedan the manager mentioned left the complex, but I couldn't make out the driver or any passengers. Kimberly's car remained in the parking lot overnight. When I processed it the next morning, her purse was on the passenger seat with her phone, wallet, and keys untouched. No signs of struggle inside the vehicle. This wasn't random. I told Detective Garcia during our case conference. Someone specifically targeted job seekers through fake postings, lured them to isolated locations, then abducted them. We discovered the fake job posting was one of dozens Martinez Business Solutions had placed across multiple job sites. Administrative assistants, customer service representatives, marketing coordinators, all offering above-market wages to attract desperate job seekers. The email responses followed a pattern. Professional language, requests for basic information like full name and address, then invitations to in-person interviews at various vacant commercial properties across 3 counties. He's been doing this systematically, I realized while mapping the interview locations. Different properties, different fake companies, but the same person behind all of them. Coordinating with other law enforcement agencies, we identified 5 similar missing person cases over the past 8 months. All young women, all unemployed, all responding to too good to be true job postings on Craigslist. The investigation revealed sophisticated reconnaissance. The perpetrator would research job seekers through their social media profiles, learning about their financial situations, family relationships, and personal vulnerabilities before targeting them. He's selecting victims based on their desperation and isolation, Detective Garcia observed. People who need work badly enough to overlook warning signs. We set up surveillance at several vacant properties where fake interviews had been scheduled. On April 12th, we spotted the dark blue sedan, a 2019 Honda Accord with stolen plates, arriving at a warehouse on Pine Street. The driver was David Williams, 38, with a history of fraud and assault charges. He'd been using multiple fake identities to rent properties for his fake business operations, then abandoning them after each abduction. During our arrest, Williams' vehicle contained zip ties, duct tape, a stun gun, and detailed files on over 30 job seekers he'd been targeting. His phone had photos of each interview location and notes about victim selection criteria. The job interviews were just the beginning, Williams admitted during interrogation. I'd evaluate each person during the fake interview, then decide which ones were suitable for my other business. Williams had been trafficking victims to buyers across the southwestern United States. The fake job interviews allowed him to assess victims' suitability, gather personal information, and ensure they wouldn't be immediately missed. His operation included multiple fake companies, dozens of vacant properties, and a network of contacts who would purchase victims for various criminal purposes. The Craigslist job postings were just the recruitment phase of a larger human trafficking enterprise. Online job boards are perfect for this, Williams explained with disturbing matter-of-fact detachment. Desperate people will believe anything if the money's good enough. They'll meet you anywhere, give you all their personal information, and trust you completely. The rescue operation located 4 victims in a warehouse outside Modesto. They'd been held for weeks, forced to work in illegal operations, and prepared for transport to other locations. Kimberly was among them, traumatized but alive. Williams' trafficking network had been operating for over 2 years, generating hundreds of thousands in revenue from victim sales. The fake job interviews were his primary recruitment method, but he'd also used fake rental listings and dating profiles. The psychological manipulation was sophisticated. The FBI behavioral analyst explained. He'd study each victim's background, then craft job offers that targeted their specific financial needs and career aspirations. The case revealed how economic desperation could be weaponized by criminals. Job seekers facing unemployment, debt, or family financial crises were particularly vulnerable to offers that seemed too good to refuse. Kimberly required months of counseling to recover from her ordeal. I thought I was being careful, she told me during our final interview. I researched the company, asked questions during the interview, met during daylight hours. But none of that mattered when the entire thing was fake. Williams received a life sentence for human trafficking, kidnapping, and multiple other charges. But the case highlighted how online job boards had created new opportunities for predators to exploit vulnerable people. The internet has made it easier than ever for criminals to find and manipulate victims. Agent Davis observed during our case debrief. Traditional safety advice is inadequate when the entire premise is fraudulent. The investigation led to policy changes requiring better verification of job postings and employer identities. But I knew determined criminals would continue finding ways to exploit people's need for employment. As I closed Kimberly's case file, I reflected on how the internet had changed both opportunity and danger. The same platforms that connected people with legitimate opportunities also provided perfect cover for predators. 6 months later, we began investigating similar disappearances in neighboring states. Williams' network had been dismantled, but the techniques he'd perfected continued to spread among other criminals. The rain was falling again as I finished my report, wondering how many other fake job postings were currently active, waiting to trap the next desperate job seeker. Have you ever applied for a job that seemed too good to be true? What verification steps do you take before attending interviews with unfamiliar companies? Thanks so much for watching. I can't express enough how much your support means. The likes, the comments, it all really helps the channel grow. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. I always take the time to read them. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on any new videos. See you next time.